Have you ever visited a hospital due to an unsettling sensation in your body or a mysterious illness, only to find yourself confronted by armed police instead of receiving medical attention? It sounds like something out of a nightmare, doesn't it? A place meant for healing and care suddenly transforms into a hostile environment where danger lurks instead of comfort. The cold stares of uniformed officers, their hands hovering over holstered weapons. The sterile scent of disinfectant mixed with the tension in the air, this was the surreal and terrifying experience Fred found himself trapped in. He had arrived expecting treatment, hoping for answers. But instead, he was met with suspicion and aggression. After being abruptly locked inside the doctor's office with no explanation, confusion and fear coursed through him. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. Had there been some sort of mistake? Was he in the wrong room? His pulse quickened, and his breath came in short gasps as claustrophobia set in. Unable to take the suffocating feeling any longer, he forced the door open, only to be met with a sight that sent a chill down his spine, guns pointed directly at him, held by officers with rigid postures and unreadable expressions. His heart pounded against his ribs. What had he done to warrant such a drastic reaction? Why was the hospital treating him as if he were a dangerous criminal rather than a patient in need of care? You're about to find out. Fred had never been the type to live a quiet, predictable life. In fact, there was nothing he loved more than hiking. Nothing that made him feel more alive than pushing his body to its limits while exploring nature's most challenging landscapes. "I'll hike until I'm 100 years old," he would often declare, his voice filled with unwavering determination. His friends knew him as a daredevil, always seeking the next great adventure, never afraid to push boundaries. There was no terrain too rugged, no peak too high, no challenge too intimidating for Fred. Over the years, he had conquered some of the most legendary trails in the world. The demanding Inca Trail leading to Machu Picchu, the grueling heights of Mont Blanc, the towering majesty of Kilimanjaro, the breathtaking depths of the Grand Canyon, and even the perilous Pashan Mountains of China. His passion for hiking ran so deep that he kept an image of Grandma Gatewood, a legendary figure among hikers, framed on his wall as a daily source of inspiration. Blessed with an athletic build and an endurance that far surpassed that of his peers, Fred rarely tired during expeditions, making him a natural leader on every journey. However, his relentless thirst for adventure came with a cost. His lifestyle left little room for long-term relationships or emotional stability. Time and time again, his romances ended before they could truly blossom, while other people his age were settling down, building families, and establishing roots. Fred was always on the move, always chasing the next horizon. He would return home for short stints, just long enough to reconnect with friends and lovers. But as soon as word of a new challenge spread through his network of fellow adventurers, he was gone, vanishing without notice, leaving behind confused and heartbroken girlfriends. But time has a way of reshaping even the most untamed spirits. As Fred reached his 40s, something inside him shifted. His passion for hiking remained as strong as ever, but the reckless urgency had lessened. The thrill of conquering new landscapes, though still intoxicating, was no longer the only thing that drove him. He found himself longing for something different, something he had never prioritized before, a family of his own. A partner with whom he could share not just fleeting moments of excitement but a lifetime of connection. Of course. He knew this would require patience, effort, and most importantly, the right person. And yet, none of that explained why he was standing in a hospital, staring down the barrels of loaded guns, his fate hanging in the balance. Unfortunately, Fred had become a bit rusty when it came to dating. It had been a while since he had last put himself out there, and his most recent attempt had not ended on a high note. He had gone on a date with a woman who, to his dismay, barely spoke throughout the evening. She had responded only occasionally, offering one-word answers and an air of indifference. As the night dragged on, Fred could feel the awkwardness settling in, making it clear that there was no real connection between them. He wasn't surprised when she didn't text or call him again after that evening. It was a disappointing experience. But Fred wasn't discouraged for long. Then, he met Sylvia. She was different. From the very first conversation, there was an undeniable spark between them. She seemed genuinely interested in getting to know him, and Fred found himself completely taken with her. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, lasting for hours on end, stretching late into the night and spilling into the next day. It felt refreshing, like a connection he hadn't experienced in a long time. Fortunately, Fred worked from home, which allowed him plenty of flexibility to enjoy this newfound companionship. He could text and call Sylvia without worrying about a rigid schedule, and he cherished every moment of their chats. In what felt like no time at all, their first in-person date arrived. Fred was excited but also felt a creeping nervousness gnawing at him. First impressions were crucial, and despite all the wonderful conversations they'd shared, there was always the possibility that things might feel different in person. Determined not to overthink it, he took a deep breath and told himself to let things unfold naturally. However, as the evening progressed, he began to sense a shift in Sylvia's energy. She wasn't as enthusiastic or engaged as she had been over the phone. Then, it hit him, he looked older in person than he did in his profile pictures. Sylvia, who was clearly seeking someone younger, was trying to mask her disappointment. Fred didn't take it personally. He understood the power of youthful passion, having experienced it himself in his younger years. If he had been in her shoes, perhaps he would have felt the same way. Accepting the reality of the situation, he decided to move on. That night, rather than dwelling on it, he simply went straight to bed, eager to put the failed date behind him. The next morning, Fred awoke with an itch on his right thumb. At first, he didn't think much of it, but the irritation was persistent. He hurried to the bathroom and washed his hand thoroughly with soap and water, assuming that would put an end to the discomfort. However, the itch didn't subside. Curious, he examined his thumb closely and noticed something strange. Tiny holes had appeared in the skin. They were barely noticeable at first, but they were definitely there. Shrugging it off, he continued with his morning routine, completing an intense workout session that lasted for about an hour. Afterward, he hopped into the shower, letting the hot water soothe his muscles. Still, the strange sensation in his thumb lingered. Later, he decided to grab breakfast at a nearby restaurant. As he sat waiting for his meal, he glanced down at his hand, hoping that the holes would have faded away. To his shock, they had grown larger. becoming even more distinct. A deep unease settled over him. This wasn't normal. Instinctively, he tucked his hands into his pockets, not wanting to draw any unwanted attention. As soon as he finished his meal, he hurried back to his apartment. The moment he stepped inside, he went straight to the bathroom and frantically washed his thumb again. But the more he scrubbed, the worse it got. The holes, now unmistakable, seemed to be expanding right before his eyes. Panic surged through him. He needed help. Grabbing his phone, he dialed a nearby hospital. But when the receptionist asked him to describe what had happened, he realized with a sinking feeling that he had no explanation. He had no idea how or why this was happening to him. Fred pondered whether the mysterious holes in his thumb could have originated from the previous night's date, or perhaps from a shopping trip a few days prior. It might have also been during the time he spent with friends 2 nights ago. He couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. Despite the uncertainty, he managed to secure a medical appointment for the same day. Upon arriving at the hospital, he realized he had a long wait ahead of him. Fred detested hospitals. He couldn't stand the pervasive smell of disinfectant that seemed to seep into every corner of the building. This aversion was one of the reasons he never missed a workout routine. He believed that regular exercise was his best defense against needing a doctor's visit. And it had worked well for him for years. Until now. As he sat in the waiting room, Fred's mind raced through the events of the past few days. He tried to recall any instance where he might have come into contact with something infectious. But he wasn't particularly focused on the facts. He just wanted to have something helpful to tell the doctor that could explain the holes in his thumb. After a few minutes of waiting, the itching began again. Fred could hear whispers around him. Looking up, he saw that everyone in the waiting room was staring at him and his thumb. The holes were now clearly visible from a distance. Fred felt extremely uncomfortable. He bowed his head again. But the whispers continued. No one dared to speak to him directly. But he noticed one of the patients approach the nurses, speaking in hushed tones and occasionally glancing in his direction. Fred understood the message loud and clear. The other patients were frightened by the holes in his hand. He didn't blame them. Nor did he feel upset about it. He would have felt the same way if someone with such an alarming infection had sat close to him. It was a natural reaction. And after all, we're only human. Ultimately, he mentally came to that conclusion. Fred was summoned to the doctor's office a short while later. He assumed it was because of the holes in his thumb, even though there was a long queue in front of him. He felt good about going to the doctor early for some reason. He breathed the same drug-filled air he hated and was relieved that he wouldn't have to wait as long as he had anticipated. The findings of the tests the doctor performed on him showed that the infection had remained on his thumb for longer than he had initially believed. Fred was unable to determine how he became infected, but he linked the anticipated date to his most recent hiking trip. Following yet another round of interrogation, Fred asked to use the loo as the physician awaited further findings. The result was deeply unsettling. Since he was unfamiliar with this type of infection, the doctor called some of his colleagues. Regretfully, a colleague of the physician who had handled a comparable situation maintained that this was an emergency. The physician hurriedly left the office. When Fred returned a few minutes later, he was shocked to see the room was empty. He decided to talk to the nurse outside the office after waiting for a few minutes. But to his astonishment, The door was closed. He pounded on it from within. But nobody answered. Outside the office he could hear activity. "Hey. I believe I'm confined. Could you open the door? Hi there? Hello," he cried out several times. It dawned on Fred that no one was saving him. He pounded the office door more forcefully. The doctor had already contacted the police by this point. Fred kept hammering the door as hard as he could. The nurses assured him that everything was under control and begged him to stop. But after a few more minutes, Fred, seething uncontrollably, ripped the door open out of wrath. Armed police officers stood a few steps away, pointing their weapons at him, as instructed by the cops. Fred immediately relaxed and lay on the ground with his hands on the back of his head. The physician came up to him and carefully described the circumstances. Fred would need to be placed in quarantine because of his highly contagious condition. It was also planned to test the other patients who had waited with him. According to the doctor, Fred may have come into contact with an infectious plant while out trekking. In order to track down and contain the illness, Fred also had to give information about the locations he had visited and the individuals he had interacted with before to arriving at the hospital. When the contagious plant was finally found, all evidence of it was eliminated. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.
A 7-year-old girl from Massachusetts left for school one morning with long, beautiful hair, but when she returned home later that day, her mother was shocked and enraged by the dramatic change in her daughter's appearance. This seemingly small act set off a chain of events that raised serious concerns about trust between parents and the institutions entrusted with the care of their children. Parents, particularly those with children facing emotional or behavioral challenges, rely on schools and care facilities to provide a high level of care and to respect their role in making decisions about their child's well-being. But for Denise Robinson, a mother from Daycare, Massachusetts, that trust was shattered following an incident involving her daughter, True, who had left home that morning with her long, curly hair cascading down her back, returned in the afternoon with it completely shaved off. Denise Robinson, like many parents, was simply trying to guide her child through the various stages of early life, while dealing with the unique challenges posed by True's emotional difficulties. As a result of these challenges, True attends Little Heroes Group Home in Daycare, a specialized facility designed to help children with social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health issues. The home provides a therapeutic environment for children aged 5 to 11. Offering them the support and treatment they need to work through their challenges. True's time at Little Heroes was meant to be a supplement to her home life, where she would spend a few nights a week in the group home, with the rest of her time spent with her family. This arrangement had seemed to be working well, until October 2017, when everything changed. That afternoon, Denise was horrified when True came home with her once-long hair completely shaved off. A dramatic alteration done at a local salon. According to reports, the haircut had been authorized by a clinician at Little Heroes, but Robinson was never consulted about this decision. The lack of communication with the parent left her feeling blindsided and deeply upset. She had trusted the facility to respect her input and her authority as True's mother, but instead, her daughter's appearance had been changed without her consent. Denise's shock and anger were evident when she spoke to New England Cable News, saying, "I am very upset. And my upset isn't going to fade because I feel like my child was assaulted and violated." She described True's hair as long and cherished, reaching all the way down her back before it was abruptly cut off. Denise was told that the decision for the haircut was made by a clinician, but she felt that this drastic change in her daughter's appearance should have involved her as well. The emotional impact of this action was not only felt by Denise, but by True herself, leaving both mother and daughter deeply disturbed by the lack of communication and respect for their family's role in making decisions about True's care. Shortly after the unsettling incident, Little Heroes Group Home issued a public statement outlining their usual protocol for decisions related to grooming and appearance. The statement emphasized that the organization is committed to providing the best care for children, with a diverse staff dedicated to the well-being of every child. According to the explanation, grooming decisions are made after considering several important factors, including hygiene. While the statement was meant to clarify the process, it did little to ease Denise Robinson's concerns. She firmly rejected the justification, telling New England Cable News, NECN, "There was no hygienic necessity for them to shave my child's head. There were no lice, no bedbugs, and no issue like tangled locks that you might call Rasta locks. Just last Saturday, her hair was styled in 2 ponytails and braided. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it." Robinson's frustration was palpable as she continued to defend her daughter's right to make decisions about her appearance, despite the organization's attempt to explain the rationale behind the haircut. Robinson's stance remained unchanged. As the situation continued to escalate, more details about the incident came to light, adding a troubling new dimension to the case. It was revealed that the salon volunteer who cut True's hair made a troubling remark to her, suggesting that the hair would grow back straight instead of curly. This comment shocked both Denise Robinson and her attorney, Richard Kendall. They were appalled by the insensitivity exhibited during the haircut. As the volunteer had used candy to distract True while cutting her hair, they made it into a game and fed her sweets while cutting her hair, Robinson shared with USA Today. The lack of respect for True's feelings and the trivializing of a deeply personal moment was disturbing to both Robinson and her attorney. To make matters worse, the volunteer reassured True that her hair would grow back straight. A statement that struck both Robinson and Kendall as completely inappropriate and insensitive. Kendall, speaking to CBS Boston, condemned the act as shocking and criticized the disregard for True's emotional state. The incident took on further complexity when Kendall openly addressed the racial undertones of the situation. In an interview with the Daily Mirror, he said, "I'm not afraid to discuss the elephant in the room. This is a matter of biracial sensitivity." He explained that True, an emotionally troubled young girl with behavioral challenges, was now facing additional strain due to the emotional trauma caused by the incident. Kendall's remarks shed light on the broader issue of race and identity, raising questions about whether this decision was made with cultural sensitivity in mind. Meanwhile, Little Heroes initiated an internal review of the incident to determine if their protocols had been properly followed, as the organization worked to assess the situation. Robinson, fueled by a mix of anger and disbelief, took to social media to voice her frustrations. On Facebook, she posted an emotional message expressing her outrage, stating, "True was assaulted yesterday at school, and anyone who knows me knows I rarely call out racism, but why was my daughter the only one whose head was shaved? In her class, there are 3 other girls, 2 white and 1 black, yet none of them had their hair cut. Why only True?" Robinson's message highlighted the racial dynamics at play, particularly since her daughter is biracial. Her post struck a nerve, prompting discussions about the implications of the decision and further intensifying the public outcry. With full, curly locks that were free of lice or any other infestations, it was truly puzzling why this incident even occurred. Robinson, confident that her daughter's hair was healthy and well kept, couldn't understand how something like this could happen. To draw attention to her situation and to seek help from others, she included the hashtag #WhyTrue in her social media plea, hoping to amplify her message and gain support from a wider audience. On October 18, 2017, her post caught the attention of a Twitter user named Kbo, who decided to share it with their followers. The tweet quickly gained traction, resonating with many people who felt sympathy for the situation, eventually amassing nearly 42,000 likes and close to 38,000 retweets. Boston TV station WCVB took notice and covered the story. which brought even more visibility to the case. In their report, they noted that Robinson was planning to file a lawsuit against Little Heroes and was seriously considering withdrawing her daughter from the institution altogether. Little Heroes, for their part, declined to discuss the specifics of the incident but released a statement indicating that they were reviewing the situation thoroughly. They assured the public that they would take appropriate actions based on their findings. Amid all the controversy and uncertainty, it is important to remember the central figure in all of this. True, the breach in trust between Denise Robinson and her daughter's school has left a significant mark on their relationship. While True's hair will eventually grow back, the emotional impact of this experience, particularly for her mother, is one that will linger long after the ordeal is over. After watching the first story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Now, let's watch another similar story. Every day before school, a man would stop a young girl. One day, her mother caught him in the act. She was shocked as she observed from her vehicle, watching the elderly man engage her daughter in conversation from across the street. Fear gripped Gina as she saw him smile and laugh. The words he spoke next would remain etched in her memory forever. Suddenly, a scream shattered the air. It was her daughter. Driven by maternal instinct, Gina leapt from her car, rushing to intervene before it was too late. Gina, a single mother, believed that the greatest role she could undertake was nurturing and caring for her children. Before embracing motherhood, she had been one of the top lawyers in her city. She relished her career, supported immensely by her husband, who was not only her partner but also her best friend. Together, they were raising their delightful daughter, Audrey. However, an unforeseen event was about to shake Gina's world. Audrey was naturally curious, like many children her age, yet she was unacquainted with the harsh realities of the world. Innocent and joyful, she was quick to engage with almost anyone, which made her a beloved figure in her community. However, Gina couldn't help but worry about her daughter's openness. One afternoon, Audrey returned home from school exceptionally cheerful, which piqued Gina's curiosity. Audrey explained her joy stemmed from making a new friend named Mr. Knuckles, assuming he was a figment of her daughter's imagination. As many children have imaginary friends, Gina smiled, but she would soon discover her assumption was incorrect. One day, as time ticked by, Gina anxiously watched the clock, unaware of what was to come. It was already 4 p.m. Half an hour past the time Audrey was supposed to arrive home from school, a mere 5-minute walk away. Gina's mind raced through all sorts of dire possibilities, but just as she was about to lose hope, Audrey appeared at the front door. Concerned about her daughter's tardiness, Gina asked her why she was late, but the answer was more than she could bear. "Sorry, Mommy," Audrey said sweetly, "I was just with Mr. Knuckles." Gina began to question whether Mr. Knuckles was even a real person. Her concerns grew when Audrey mentioned that Mr. Knuckles met her at the corner every day for a chat. This made Gina uneasy. The thought of her daughter engaging with a stranger at the school corner was unsettling. The following day, Audrey came home on time, but she lacked her usual joyful demeanor and was visibly distressed, her face red and teary. When questioned, she dismissed her upset state as being due to a bad test score, but Gina sensed a lie. Was Mr. Knuckles involved? She needed to uncover the truth. Despite her worries, Gina tried to comfort herself with the thought that Audrey was a smart girl, capable of handling herself. Yet, the mother's instinct in Gina remained on high alert, vigilant for any signs of trouble linked to this mysterious Mr. Knuckles. Despite her confidence in the solid moral, ethical, and value-driven upbringing she provided, Gina couldn't silence the persistent, anxious voice in her mind. She felt compelled to personally meet Mr. Knuckles, the man her daughter admired so greatly. The day after she left Audrey at school, an idea struck Gina. However, nothing could have braced Gina for the revelations that awaited her about Mr. Knuckles. After dropping Audrey off and watching her daughter sprint towards the school with youthful zeal, Gina lingered, hoping to catch a glimpse of Mr. Knuckles herself. After a short wait, an elderly man appeared at the school's entrance. Gina narrowed her eyes for a better view as Audrey approached him, triggering an unsettling sensation in Gina's gut. Mr. Knuckles, a diminutive figure in a red baseball cap, watched the children with apparent pleasure. Gina observed from a distance as her daughter engaged in conversation with the man. Watching joy spread across his weathered face as he listened to Audrey, suddenly, Mr. Knuckles raised his fist. Instantly alarmed, Gina bolted from her car, fear overtaking her. Without hesitation, she left her car door ajar and keys in the ignition. Driven solely by the urge to protect her daughter, her heart thundering, Gina dashed towards Audrey, her protective instincts in full force. There was no chance the elderly gentleman would escape easily. Gina, who usually maintained a calm demeanor and seldom felt alarmed, found herself in an uncharacteristic state of panic this time. The stakes were high. It involved her daughter and an old man in his 90s. Feeling nauseous with worry, Gina knew she had to act swiftly to aid her daughter. As she raced towards her daughter, Gina noticed that a group of schoolchildren had gathered around both the old man and her daughter, Audrey. Suddenly, the air filled with the children's laughter and cheerful greetings of "Good morning, Knuckles." It was at this moment that Gina's fears dissolved. Realizing that her terrifying scenario was unfounded, her fears were allayed by the presence of Wally Richardson, affectionately nicknamed Mr. Knuckles by the adoring students, a 94-year-old war veteran. Every day, he stood by the school gates, warmly greeting the children with kind words, a handshake, or a fist bump. Mr. Knuckles engaged the kids with questions about their lives and left everyone, parents included, inspired by his vibrant spirit. The question arose, what did Mr. Knuckles gain from this daily interaction? Mr. Knuckles was driven by a desire to positively impact the children's lives, choosing to spend his twilight years inspiring the young. The elderly man had even become a sensation online. A video showcasing him greeting the students had amassed nearly 500,000 views, having spread joy for a decade. Mr. Knuckles joyfully confessed his intention to continue these interactions for as long as possible. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comment section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.